The original film, which I shot in 1979, cost $1 million. I believe we had 2 big Valley Fog machines and some small smokers. And this film has 27 or 28 times the budget.
Well, we had about 40 fog machines or 30 fog machines. So we had this fellow named Bob Comer who had an army of people, and they created fog.
I think the challenge for us on this particular movie was to try and achieve the atmospherics, meaning the fog, sufficiently enough for the director. There's a lot up in the air. It was a very complicated thing to do.
We tried to get all the fog effects practically. That's how we started off. So we have like angry fog and sneaky fog and all these different characters, because the fog is a personality. So we really wanted to get that personality of it doing things.
Over a period of about a month, we had people doing all kinds of tests with all kinds of very complicated equipment, making different kinds of smoke.
Bob came up with a couple of great things. One was this big device just full of dry ice, forcing steam into it. So it would come out in this big billowing sort of caterpillar of fog. And when it came over water, it would come as a sort of a carpet. But when it hit something like the side of the boat, it would come up but over and tumble into the boat. So that we call sneaky fog. And then there's angry fog. What that is 3 guys with lights strapped to them with asbestos layers behind because the lights were burning so hard. And with 2 fog machines running towards you with the fog just billowing, but lit up from inside.
When it came down to it, some of the simplest forms of smoke were the best.
They're everywhere.
Rupert Wainwright was wonderful on this from the beginning. He had a pretty solid idea on what he wanted. So that was really sort of set the tone design-wise and really gave us something to work from right from the beginning.
First of all, Toby and I would work on taking the face of the actor. Then we would then Toby would go ahead and do Photoshop experiments on top of it, and then put scars on all the rest of it. So we'd get a rough idea based on a photo of the actor's face. But then, of course, you have to recreate that in 3D on the actor's face, and everything changes.
Life casting is sort of the first process in almost any prosthetic build. And we life cast Rade in just a straightforward sort of 3/4 plaster bust of him, and we built his leprosy appliances from that cast. The 2 different main designs in this are our disease look and our ghost look. Had you know, a similar play where they had lesions that had kind of gone further with the rot into their ghost look. We took the appliances that were just, you know, sort of 1/8 inch thick for the most part, and we painted on the back of the appliances so that you actually had that tone reading through. Which is something you can't do with foam latex. So that was a nice trick that really kind of plays the light well. The entire process for Rade was, we got down to about 3 hours. So it wasn't bad. I mean, earlier on, the first few times out, when we're still kind of developing the method of application and the paint scheme, we were looking more around 5 hours. So it was great. He was really happy when we got closer to 3. You take that and you put that onto an 18-hour shooting day plus an hour removal. It doesn't leave you much time to sleep.
I think one of the most amazing pieces that Toby came up with is not just the leper makeup on Blake, but also on all the other lepers. Like when you see the hold of the ship, and you see all of those faces. Some of them were so freaky, we barely managed to shoot them, and we would cover them in shadow, so you couldn't really see them terribly well. And then when they all come back, when they're in the graveyard, you see those faces again. It's really shocking. And so I think he did really a truly amazing job.
Prosthetics is wonderful, but it's always an additive process. The guys in visual effects, Chris Watts, was involved early on, right from the beginning when I first came in on this show.
The makeup that Toby built was really only halfway to what Rupert wanted to see Blake looking like in the movie. You know, he's supposed to have been underwater for 160 years, so his character in the movie is supposed to have a nose missing, and a good portion of his face is missing, and you can see his teeth and his skull through the face. So really what we needed to do was cover up those things that we couldn't remove from the actor, like a nose, with a CG representation of a face with no nose. In order to keep that face from sliding around, it's basically an assistive device to the artists who are doing that work to put these little red LED lights on Rade's face.
The special effects came up with some really fine little low wattage LEDs for us, and we just sunk them in underneath the appliances, just little red pinpoints of light that visual effects uses to track in the separate piece we built for Rade from cast of his appliances on his life mold.
These days, as with any sort of technique that's advanced over the years, you get a lot more opportunities to try out different things. So if if the director is looking for a particular effect and hasn't been able to quite get it the first try, computers basically make it a lot faster for you to be able to try many, many different things.
Basically, there's 2 shots in the movie of an underwater ghost, and what they did is they actually had an actress who was underwater with lights on them, and basically comes up to Stevie's car after her car flips off the cliff after being hit by a truck. And what we did in that was we playing the footage backwards, having her kind of slide in so the hair moves, very strangely. We tracked in skulls on top of her face, and then also rendered out what we called caustic passes, which is basically, a caustic is what you see at the bottom of a swimming pool. When the sunlight's shining through, it's kind of that weird rippling pattern. And we basically were projecting that on her face, and then doing tricks where we would grab different parts of her and then sliding it in time. So different parts of her would be moving at different speeds, and it was like this really just kind of bizarre looking, frightening scene that, like in the middle of this dark black ocean where she's fallen into, this like white ghost kind of pops out at her for a good scare. And then from a technical standpoint, when you have, an actor underwater, you have bubbles coming out of their mouth and that. So that was actually one of the big challenges on that shot is even though they're trying to hold their breath, bubbles are coming out and of course they're crossing the face. So we had to do a lot of cleanup work, removing all the bubbles, removing all the soot, and then cleaning up some lighting and rigs and that before we could even start on the effects on that sequence. In the scene where Kathy, who's played by Sarah Botsford, gets pulled out the window, that shot had some interesting challenges as well. Basically, we had Kathy shot in camera. There was real fog on the set there that was kind of swirling around her legs. Another plate was shot, which was a stunt woman who was in a rig, and she gets pulled out through the window and crashes the glass in that, and she's on a wire. So the first challenge was just blending those two. In situations where we have 2 plates such as this, we have to seamlessly blend the one actress into the stunt woman. And we do certain amounts of patchwork. We're trying to make sure that things, the set, the windows, and angle lines up perfectly. And then we actually use this sort of technique that was common in the 90s, the morphing phenomena that everyone's familiar with, where to actually blend the one plate of the actress into the stunt woman. And then once we get that done, which that itself is a lot of work, we then had to create multiple layers of digital fog. There was an ambient sort of creepy fog layer that was added to the in-camera stuff. And then in that particular shot, to motivate her getting pushed out the window, we have a separate sort of thrust of fog that comes in. And it's a little bit higher and just comes up out of the ground fog, and it's kind of scary. In the footage of Tom Malone getting pushed through the streets, there's 2 things going on in those scenes. We have Blake, who we need to make him transparent and add a sort of fog effect coming off of him. And then the second thing was Tom Malone has, basically the actor's wearing a rig, this sort of circular harness rig that they've had that allowed him to be pulled along and allowed him to kind of spin in multiple axes.
We wanted him to look like he was being sort of driven by a force field. And so what we did was we put like a trapeze artist's rotator gag around his waist. And this was mainly done by the stuntman, to be honest. And then put 2 ropes on the side of that and pulled him real hard so he could kind of spin and flip and rotate as he went. But he was being pulled And then we have Rade walk exactly the right distance right behind him, so it looks like he's pushing him along.
That scene was all about rig removal and getting rid of the big stunt rig and the two guys on either side and the wires that held them up. And then we just we did the Blake treatment behind him and added some fog behind him. The second part of that scene was in the graveyard. That was shot somewhere else entirely.
For the burning sequence of Malone at the end, what we did is as a kind of combination of two things. One, we first took the plates of the actor wearing the burn mask, because there's issues, he has, obviously bigger hands, slightly bigger face from wearing the safety mask. So the first thing we'll do is actually try to go in there and warp and kind of suck the face back in, to kind of shrink the head back to normal size, bring the hand, shrink the hands in a little bit. And then what we do is we track a digital character over his body, and then we start actually emitting CG fire coming off. So it's going to be a combination of CG fire to help cover up, some of the parts of the mask, so you can obviously tell it's him, but we're just kind of filling in some of the blank spots, and then also tracking in live action fire elements. So it's kind of a combination of those three tricks to make that sequence play out. The end scene of the movie is a challenge, because not only do we have the Elizabeth character interacting with a ghost Blake, and the characters are all transforming several times during the course of one shot.
That was shot on the last night of shooting, and it was a fairly complicated shot, probably the most complicated shot of the movie. Essentially what we needed to do for that shot was we needed to get Elizabeth and Blake doing the motions of kissing in 4 different costumes, and rotating in exactly the same way each time. And then also we needed to get them kissing each other without the other person, because they're transparent. When Blake's head passes in front of Elizabeth's head, you need to see Elizabeth's face through the back of Blake's head. So if you actually have them both on set, obviously the back of Blake's head, since he's not really transparent, will be obscuring Elizabeth's face. So really what you need to do is you need to get Elizabeth mocking a fake kiss without anybody there. Both
The Elizabeth character and the Blake character are going through several transformations. So we have Elizabeth going from herself to a ghost version of herself from the past. We have there's a certain amount of leprosy effects that are actually transitioning in and out during the shot as the camera's spinning around them in 360. We also have background players that were minions that were on the Elizabeth Dane boat. They're going through transformation, and by the end of the shot, Elizabeth has completely transformed. So it's a long, continuous shot. You don't have any cuts or editing to help you hide what's going on. So there's many layers at play there. And one of the cool things about the shot is at certain parts of the shot, the different actors are transparent, and you actually see the other characters passing through behind them. One of the things that really makes this movie different than the original is that, just the sense of scope and scale to some of the shots that we were able to do, just because of new technology and, things that they couldn't have ever done in the original.
Filmmakers back then, we didn't have at our disposal what filmmakers now have, which is a lot of technical tricks to enhance and even make it more frightening.